Welcome to another episode of Conduct Detrimental Dan Lust, joined by my friend, the one, the only, Taryn Sharma. Taryn, how's it going, my man?
It's great. It's a great week to be alive. It is a fascinating couple of weeks to follow sports law.
Okay, so we're really going to cover just one topic for this week. And listen, I would have loved to on Thursday have popped on an emergency episode, but I had a monstrous 30-page brief that had to be filed on Friday, and I did not have the time dedicated to it. I was able to sneak in a couple interviews for Chicago Sports Radio 670. I did one for Washington Sports Radio. Listen, I can sneak them in, but if I'm going to go on the pod, I want to bring my A game, and I did not feel like I had an hour to dedicate. So that's my bad, but I'm ready to talk about it now. And we have some more fallout. The gambling story is going to be the only thing we cover. So if you're looking at the title of this podcast and we actually got some nice DMs, and shout out to our Conduct Detrimental Symposium. Apparently there were some nods in the crowd for us to go live and do an episode. Listen, I would love to do that, but sometimes it's not realistic. Sometimes it's not. But we are going to keep coming and keep coming in the podcast, and the podcast is going to be great. So we're just going to keep doing it over and over and over until we get a cease and desist order from nobody. I don't know where that was going. We're just going to keep rolling with it. Taryn, biggest story in sports. I do with my students at the beginning of every class. I taught a Monday night, and I always say, like, tell me some big stories going on in sports. And they always tell me some random things like, Benny Blanco got married. I'm like, that's not relevant. That's out. Someone this week's, I'm like, okay. Before a couple people raise their hands, I'm like, biggest stories in sports, let's hear them. And someone raises their hand. The first person, like 10 hands shoot up. And the first person goes, Adrian Peterson, DWI. And I'm like, no. I mean, like, that's somewhat important, but it's not what I'm looking for. And then, fortunately, the other 9 hands in the class were like, betting scandal, Terry Rozier, Chauncey Billups. And I'm like, yes, there are no wrong answers in my class except for that one. That was the wrong answer. So, Taryn, we're here to break it down. Let's, how do you want to attack this bad boy? I have some thoughts. But
let's start here. Are you referring to this as betting scandal or betting scandals?
That's a great point, Taryn. So originally, my hot take right off the press is I did some interview immediately. I think I did it with Washington Sports Radio, and they said, "What's your first takeaway from having viewed this?" And I said, I watched the press conference with Cash Patel at 10 a.m. that morning. I watched every question, and I go, I'm not quite understanding why these two things are tied together, other than basketball and other than gambling and other than arrests being done at the same time and other than, seemingly a 2-for-1 press conference special. They just wanted to do them all at the same time. I'm like, I don't view these things as being too similar. Taryn, my thoughts on that have started to change a little bit, Taryn. I'm starting to see the interconnectivity between these two charges. Taryn, you listen. This is a conversation. Don't just grill me. I want to know, do you think these two things are related?
Yeah, I do. And I think that there is overlap in the personnel who are kind of involved in this. And so my basic understanding, and maybe if you think differently, tell me, but my basic understanding is there are these illegal poker games that go on. And they're basically using individuals like Chauncey Billups, allegedly. All of this is alleged. This is what is in the complaint. Defense lawyers haven't had a chance to attack this. So all of this is based on what the government is saying. So the mafia, La Cosa Nostra, is running these illegal backroom games. These backrooms are using athletes like Billups, the faces. Well, you see Chauncey, he's big shot Billups. He must be doing well for himself still. He's coaching in the NBA. He won a championship with the Pistons. Like, he's here gambling. Like, it must be on the up and up. He wouldn't put himself in that position. So essentially using individuals like him, individuals like to sell the game's legitimacy. And there are, I believe, individuals who have gotten caught up in these games, which aren't rigged, They're losing, and as a result, they are being leaned on for non-publicly available information to inform gambling picks, particularly on prop bets.
Okay. So, Taryn, I want to stop you, okay? Because I think everything you said is correct. I think we should address the elephant in the room to start. You and I both had the same thought. That's why I liked your question. These things aren't related. This is just the FBI getting lazy, 2-for-1 special. And then I thought about it. And then, Taryn, I had this moment of epiphany on my end. And I said, these things are related. And they're related because the FBI wants to send a message, but the question is who's the message for? So let's back up a little bit. And unless you're living under a rock, I imagine everyone knows exactly what we're talking about. This is one of these things that I get hit up by like everyone in my circles. Like when I'm coaching soccer on the weekend, everyone wants to talk about it. So like I know this kind of is more pervasive than just a sports law story. So we'll assume everyone understands what's happening. So we have Terry Rozier on the inside information side. He's kind of like they had some stupid name. It was like Operation Royal Flush on the poker side, and it was like Operation other stupid name on the other side. But they're two different operations, two very different schemes. And I'll say this, Taryn, I think you're right. The mafia is involved in both. Could that be why they're related? Sure. Are the charges very similar in terms of money laundering and wire fraud? Yes, very similar. Do they involve NBA players and seemingly players of no other sport? Yes, those things are similar. But the message here is very big. Okay. Terry Rozier is not, I think for NBA circles, and maybe if you're listening to this, you don't know who Terry Rozier is. He's not like quite all-star caliber level. He was at points in his career. He's in the middle. I think it's his fourth year of a like 4-year, $100 million contract right around there. So he's a very high paid player, not necessarily like.
He was great in Boston early in his career. Scary Terry.
Right.
There was some momentum there.
Casual NBA fans, casual will know who Terry Rozier is. Well, general sports fans, no, they won't know who Terry Rozier is. You just wouldn't know that. Now, he's the head of the inside betting info side. He's just and the biggest name that comes of it. And we'll talk a little bit about what the NBA knew or didn't know beforehand. But that's a rather simple scheme. It's Terry Rozier or other NBA players or other NBA coaches or people in NBA circles telling other people that either someone was going to get hurt or not going to play. It's just a game of telephone. It's not the most complex scheme that's ever existed in mankind. Now, Taryn, on the poker side, we have a much more complicated scheme. We have X-ray glasses. We have automatic shufflers. We have the equivalent of like the Major League Baseball's replay room where someone offside is being able to read the strength of hands and communicate it back. And there were quarterbacks and there were people, Taryn, to your point, the faces of the operation. They'd bring people like Chauncey Billups in. And there were, again, and I don't want to bring all these people into this, but people like KG or Kevin Garnett are alleged to have played in this game, certainly not named in the complaint or the indictment, but there were other famous people attached. And the scheme was allegedly bring a handful of famous people, bring a couple fish, and the other people are just kind of in on it. So, we don't really get the specifics really on the sports betting side. We just understood that this bet was being placed, and we'll get into the specifics of that momentarily. But on the poker side, it's a very complicated, very high tech. It's like James Bond, like year 2100. Like it's a very complicated poker scheme with super technology, the likes of which I've never really heard of. So certainly at some point we're going to get to a movie of like Ocean's 11 style with this type of poker game and X-ray contact lenses. They're two very different schemes.
Let me just say, Dan, real quick, between this and the Louvre heist last week, Ocean's 11 type plots are having a big moment.
Yeah, maybe they should have done like a 3-for-1 press conference special and just looped everything in. No, so here's the message I think is being sent, and this is what I'm kind of alluding to. Casual NBA fans will know who Chauncey Billups is, NBA champion, Hall of Famer elected in 2024. So in one sense, there's a message that the FBI is sending, like, hey, we want everyone to know that this is Chauncey Billups. He's the main guy amongst these two schemes. And if you know Chauncey Billups being involved, a current NBA head coach, this scheme is really big. And Chauncey Billups although he's not named in the inside information side, we learned after the initial news break that Chauncey Billups seems to be one of the individuals who provided information on the inside information scheme. Listen, he's not mentioned by name, but the description of the individual involved someone that seemed to have been providing information, seems to be Chauncey Billups. So there is some level of interconnectivity. Now, Taryn, here's the real message, and this is the one that I find to be, we'll say, interesting. You'll see where I'm going with it momentarily. This is seeming to be a message from the FBI and the Eastern District of New York that the NBA should be doing more to curtail its players, its coaches from having interactions with shady individuals. So it seems to be a message sent to the NBA at large. And yes, it certainly would get more people's attention if Chauncey Billups is the main guy as opposed to Terry Rozier. But I think it's a message and a shot across the bow directly to the NBA, which is in my backyard of New York, and it's the Eastern District of New York. It's a New York prosecutor's office on the federal side. So I think it's as much as an attack on the NBA as it is on these players.
Yeah, certainly. And I thought that that's why Brian Windhorst's comments this week were particularly interesting. He said that this issue with Rozier was already investigated.
We knew this. We knew that.
Yeah. And so he was talking about how the gap between player availability and the announcement of that publicly is been the target of gamblers. So I think that is a big piece of it, is that the information, especially as we enter this age of legalized sports betting and where individuals can just go on their phones and bet, this is sort of an attempt to protect the legitimacy of that as well.
I think so too. And this brings me to listen, I did this whole thing with my class last night. I find it to be super interesting. The NBA, if we haven't done this, we certainly should. The NBA knew about Terry Rozier a long time ago. This is a game that happened in 2023 when he was a member of the Charlotte Hornets. And I'll give people a quick presser in this concept of suspicious betting activity. The NBA can figure that out in real time, immediately. And they have outside vendors that basically can comb DraftKings data and FanDuel data and BetMGM data, whatever, legal betting operations, and tell you when there's a pattern of suspicious betting activity. So, Taryn, I am somebody, I generally wager, I'm a high volume wagerer. I bet like $10, $20. Every once in a while, I'll feel really good about something and I might bet $100, but like I don't really stray outside of those normal bands. So betting has been legal in New York for about 4 years, since the 2021 Super Bowl. It was I think it was the Rams Bengals Super Bowl, but I remember when I got my account. So they have a profile on me from all of my bets I've ever placed. They kind of know Dan's placing $10, 20 bets, maybe 100 every once in a while. So let's say, Taryn, that I all of a sudden place a bet for $10,000 and I load onto my app and I bet $10,000. And Taryn, you have a similar profile to me. You bet 10, 20, 50, 60, whatever. And all of a sudden you load up $10,000 and you bet on Terry Rozier unders. And I bet the same thing. And there's 100 people like us that are now betting outside of our normal bands of bets. And we're all betting the same thing. It's already flagged. We already understand that this is suspicious betting activity. Now, beyond the individual user's suspicious betting activity, they'll have a profile of every game and every prop. Like they have an understanding, and I say these outside sites, there's any number of vendors that do this, but they'll say like on a Wednesday night game, Hornets versus another non-playoff team, be it, we'll say, I don't want to say anything bad. Like, let's say the Hawks. They have some understanding of what those bets are going to be. And if all of a sudden the handle bet on Terry Rozier is like 300x what it normally is in that spot, they know something's going on. So from my understanding, and I also listen to the Hoop Collective podcast. Taryn, is that one of your podcasts?
No.
Oh, I listen to Windhorst's podcast. It's very good. Windhorst, friend of the show. Been on the show before.
Love Brian Windhorst. Yeah.
Every once in a while, I'll send Windy a text, probably once a year, just to let him know I still exist. I'm thinking about him, my man from Nebraska, from Omaha. They seem to say that the NBA was aware of this ahead of time. They saw what was the suspicious bet. It was Rozier unders, and they wanted to catch him in the act. And when Rozier started playing very radically and he went down with a fake injury, from Windhorst's reporting, he was held out the rest of that year, not because he was injured, but because the NBA said, we're holding him out of the game because we're aware of what happened. Okay. Taryn, I'm going to say this, and then I'm going to give it to you. Taryn, my understanding is that the NBA was aware of this federal prosecutor's office investigation, and they cleared Terry Rozier of any wrongdoing, and they allowed him to return to the court despite knowing basically everything I just told you. Maybe there's some aspects that they learned, and I said that them being the prosecutor's office, but I would say majority of the information, if not all, the NBA was aware of and made a decision to look the other way. I don't know how you want to phrase it. Taryn, I view that decision, the decision to clear Terry Rozier, as a very large factor as to why Kash Patel and the Eastern District of New York decided to combine these two big NBA stories together to send the message like, you're not swiping and you're not throwing this under the rug. We've now made this story too big for you to ignore.
Yeah, it's a really good point. I think that the language that they specifically used in clearing Rozier is interesting, right? They said that they did not find a violation of NBA rules. And obviously, that's their jurisdiction. That's what's important for the NBA conducting an investigation and then ultimately determining that they're going to allow him to play. But the what he's accused of here, Terry Rozier, Terry Rozier, is essentially just like playing for 10 minutes, making sure that the unders hit in a way that at least would maybe not look so suspicious. Then and also paying for his conspirators travel to Philadelphia, and then going home and counting the money with him in Charlotte. Like, all of that looks really bad for the NBA to then say, like, oh yeah, we actually don't have a rule against any of that. I know it sounds incredibly shady, and it's possibly affecting the outcome of the games, whether you care about those games or not, but we don't have a rule against it.
Yeah.
And so I think also this is something that ESPN has brought up, their reporters, and including Windhorst. But there is an ongoing investigation into Malik Beasley, and that is going to be under the microscope now. They're going to need to make sure that everything is buttoned up. And I wouldn't be surprised, Dan, also to see an outside firm called in to specifically investigate this in the same way that, Wilkie was called in to investigate Dan Snyder.
Okay, so I agree with everything you said, and I always find this joke to be it just sitting there. Remember, Taryn, have you ever seen this very iconic movie called Air Bud? Have you ever seen it?
Yeah, I sure have.
There's a famous scene in the movie. They're like, well, like, are you sure this dog can play basketball? And then they like start going through the rule book, and then I go, there's no rule that says a dog can't play basketball, so the dog plays basketball. Taryn, the name of this podcast is called Conduct Detrimental. If you want, you could suspend a player for conduct detrimental to the team,
You can.
conduct detrimental to the league. They could have found a way to reverse engineer it. I have been on this podcast, and I always preface this with, I'm not a tinfoil hat guy, and I'm not. I'm genuinely not. I don't believe Pizzagate, all these crazy things. I don't believe in them. They're all insane. I don't know, left, right. You could tell me any type of conspiracy theory. I don't really believe in them. Now, I genuinely do feel, and maybe I feel it, I'm just telling people, the NBA, the NFL, Major League Baseball, they don't really have to tell us the truth. They can, and any of these teams, they can run a fake internal investigation where they pay for the bill, and the bill can say whatever they want it to say. And it's not like the leagues are run by the government where they owe the public some aspect of truth. They can do whatever they want. These are private organizations. So I've said this, in the Brian Flores saga, when Stephen Ross was alleged to have told Brian Flores, hey, for every game you lose, I'll pay you six figures. And the NFL investigated it, and they go, well, we do think that he said that, but we think he was joking. And the owner, he didn't mean it. We're not punishing him for tanking. That would be crazy. That's not what happened. So, Brian Flores is a credible source. He said it happened. The NFL said that statement happened, but they said, no, he was just joking. No big deal. So they threw it under the rug. And then, Taryn, the one that we did last year was Shohei Ohtani. And I'm like, Shohei Ohtani's dead to rights. I mean, like, Shohei Ohtani is alleged to not understand any word of English, and he doesn't understand anything. And he was so he watched his friend, his roommate, his best friend, a guy he called his brother, um, seemingly bet on games every single day, but somehow Shohei Ohtani was so immune to common sense and reality. He had no concept that this man was betting at any point in time. So I also view that as not making any sense. But Major League Baseball did their investigation and they looked at it super closely. And they said, you know what? Our star international player, the best player in the history of our sport, we looked at it really closely. Trust us. Nothing to see here. It was all the interpreter. Remember that story that the interpreter said where Shohei bailed him out? Yeah. Just pretend that didn't happen. And let's go with the one that doesn't get Shohei in trouble. So I view something similar to have happened with Terry Rozier. All of the suspicious betting alerts went off. Terry Rozier, from our understanding, from the public's understanding, did the thing that the suspicious betting pattern said he was going to do, and then he did it. So, yeah, it looks a lot better for the NBA if you sweep this under the rug and you don't have a player of that level doing something like that. But the problem is, Taryn, you can't have it both ways. The NBA banned Jonte Porter for life for very similar activity. Suspicious betting patterns on a player, Michael Porter Jr.'s brother, who's like the 12th man at the end of the bench, who got a fake, I'm going to say fake, but I guess we'll call it a seemingly very suspect eye injury and had to leave the game. So you ban Jonte Porter for life, but you tell everybody there's nothing to see here with Terry Rozier. So I view what happened with the FBI and Kash Patel as their way of saying to the NBA, you're not going to get away with this. This is a federal crime across state lines. I don't know if we necessarily buy that DraftKings and FanDuel and all these other sites are like true quote unquote victims. But to the extent that the mob is finding a way to profit off these endeavors, and NBA characters are central to it, current NBA players, current NBA coaches, that's the FBI saying, NBA, get your league together. There's no baseball players in this. There's no NFL players. There's no NHL players. It's not to say that there won't be at some point in time. But these two stories involving the mob and involving some type of sports endeavors, right, using some type of luring fish in, whatever else, you get where I'm going with the turn. I think that's the message that was sent. That's the interconnectivity of these two, that the NBA does not have their league in control. And Adam Silver's got a lot of tough questions to answer.
Yeah. And look, this is not the first time, even historically, that the NBA has had a case like this. The Tim Donaghy case is obviously very well known.
It's a great example, Taryn.
Yeah. And he was involved in betting on games that he officiated, and then also feeding that information to professional gamblers. And there's probably some La Cosa Nostra involvement there as well. So the NBA seems to be particularly susceptible to this type of game manipulation. And to me here, the reliability is the coin of the realm. It matters that fans of your game think that everything is on the up and up. This is real. These guys are really like peak competitors, and they are motivated by winning and all the perks that come with it, but winning. And so if you have a large swath of the watching populace and possibly the betting populace believing that your games are fixed, that seems to be a bad thing. Not just in terms of like I don't want this news out there, but that's something that could really significantly impact the value of our product. Like, as in, people won't watch if they think it's fake, unless it's like, you're aware of what the thing is, like with professional wrestling.
Don't hate on professional wrestling. I don't know where you're going.
I'm not, but everyone is in on bit, right?
Yeah, Taryn, you bring up such a good point, and I, and that was a previous era of the NBA with David Stern in charge, and not Silver, but very similar with the Donaghy stuff. Like, and I watched the documentary. I actually signed it to my students every semester. It's called Operation Flagrant Foul. It's on Netflix. I thought it was very good. And they did similar to Ohtani. It seemed like this scheme went further than Donaghy. And there was all these phone calls between Donaghy and Scott Foster, another NBA ref, like an insane amount of phone calls. And you're kidding yourself if you don't think that there are other NBA refs involved with the amount of money they're paying refs versus the amount of money that's being made on the back end. So, and Taryn, to your point, Donaghy said he was influencing the game with foul calls and this. He talked about a very complicated scheme, but then the NBA wants you to believe, he didn't influence the NBA finals. I mean, like, he influenced other games, but not the most suspicious NBA finals of all time. What was it?
Yeah.
The Western Conference Finals with the Suns?
Western Conference Finals. Yeah.
Yeah. Was it the Suns? Oh, the
No,
Spurs.
Kings, and Lakers. The most absurd officiating that I can ever remember.
So it's one of these two things is true. It's that these leagues get so lucky every single time that, like, there's a controversy, but it never rises quite to the level to make the public suspect. It never does. It gets really close. We get to the 1 yard line and then there's a fumble and it goes the other way. Like, or the leagues don't really have to tell us the truth. They don't have an affirmative obligation to give the public the truth. And they could just say, like, hey, look at this shiny thing over here, like, look away. And that's tends to be what the public does. So, Taryn, I'm with you. Am I rooting for the FBI against the NBA? Not really. Like, I like the NBA. I want the product to be cleaned up, but we've been waiting for this moment. We've been doing this podcast now going on 5 years. I've been waiting for the moment where there's a forced level of truth serum. And certainly Chauncey Billups is not coaching in the NBA right now because they didn't investigate him, as far as I know, for these poker schemes. And he's arrested. There's a whole different litany of stuff on that side, right? And just so we can, I mean, he functionally he was investigated or arrested for something that the NBA had not seemingly known about before. They never investigated him, they never cleared him, all this other stuff. And the allegation with respect to Billups is that he wasn't just playing in the games, that he was part of the take, that he was part of the he was getting something off the top, whereby he's resulting in a charge of money laundering and wire fraud, that he wasn't just a guy that was showing up
from the illegally conceived proceeds.
Correct. Like, and this is not the term, but he was having equity in the operation. He wasn't getting paid, on a appearance basis. He was getting paid on whatever the take was. That seems to be the scheme. He's the only player named. Do we believe in innocent until proven guilty? Sure, but I think it's interesting that Chauncey is, at the top of the scheme. So, Taryn, I bring this up to tell you that I think the NBA has a really big problem on their hands with respect to Terry Rozier. And I asked this to my students. And Taryn, you're now a full-blown lawyer, but I'd love to ask you this question, and I'd love to see if you can nail it. Taryn, let's say you're Adam Silver, okay? And Adam Silver's asked this question, the following question. Mr. Silver, earlier in January of 2025, you cleared Terry Rozier of any involvement. You said there's no NBA rule. You cleared him to play. How do you sync up the fact that you cleared him to play versus a federal indictment and him being arrested? How can those two things make sense, Mr. Silver?
Yeah, well, we take the integrity of the game very seriously, and it's of the utmost importance to us. And that's why immediately after it was flagged that there was, something possibly unbecoming going on, that we investigated it internally. Our investigation was thorough. We invested a lot of time and resources into looking into all of the facts here, and we determined that the rules that the league has set forth and agreed upon with the players' union in the collective bargaining agreement were not violated by Mr. Rozier. And at that point, we made the decision that he would be permitted to continue playing his and pursuing his dreams of being an NBA basketball player.
That was a long answer to say, well, listen, I think you're correct. And you actually sounded very similar to Adam Silver. So kudos to you. I think, and we're going to get Silver in front of a mic at some point. I think Silver's going to have to say that there was information that the feds learned that was beyond, with the federal subpoena power and maybe cooperating witnesses, that was beyond what we had learned on, from our investigation of Rozier. And yes, I would think if you looked at Rozier's cell phone, you could probably figure out all of this stuff. I do strongly feel that the NBA probably had enough to do a little bit more, and then the NBA probably tried to do the bare minimum and make this go away. But yeah, Taryn, I have a very hard time seeing how Silver gets around this. And remember, it was 2 weeks ago where Silver originally said he didn't know anything about the Kawhi situation, like the actual what's the name of the entity that was doing the fake alleged fake
Aspiration, right?
yeah, aspiration. He originally Silver like gave a quick quote. He goes, "Yeah, I've never heard of anything about aspiration." And the next week, Silver corrected himself and he goes, "Well, I didn't mean I didn't know anything about aspiration. I didn't know anything about this aspiration deal, the terms of the deal." So Silver is got it. This is not a deal about a no-show, brand ambassador agreement and salary cap circumvention, which I think are important. That's a somewhat just in the nature of the allegation. It's an isolated issue, isolated to that team, and you can investigate
that is important to his constituency,
right?
But it's not a federal law that
Correct.
is being violated. It's
right.
the salary cap that's being
right.
manipulated.
I view the integrity of every single contest, the actual gameplay at question. Yeah, the actual back end salary cap. It doesn't really mean that the games are unfair. It maybe means people are violating the rules in the front office in terms of the general manager's office. But it doesn't mean anything that the games themselves aren't fair. And there are other motivations for players. So, Taryn, I think Silver has to send a really big message. And the question that I've been asked is, how do you curtail this? How do you protect against it? And the other stupid question that I've been asked, listen, no stupid people, just stupid questions every once in a while. And that question is essentially, how do you know this isn't more pervasive? And I said, well, the technology tells us, and we can very quickly identify suspicious bets. So this era of DraftKings and FanDuel, I think, lets us see lets these things be brought to light much more so than they were in the decades prior to this.
Right. This isn't like the Boston College point shaving with the Goodfellas guys.
We're going to see this every time it occurs.
Yeah. So the U.S. integrity is really good. I think that that's probably the most positive outcome of the widespread proliferation of gambling, whether you think it's good or bad. And I tend to think that it's had a lot of negative effects that we didn't think of downstream. But so I want to play out what you were saying. Do you have another thought?
I just want to finish this thought, and then I'm going to give it to you. The point is, how do you curtail this moving forward? You send a huge message, and you ban Terry Rozier for life, just like you did for Jonte Porter. You send that level of a ban for life. The problem is, you've already cleared him of the majority of that activity. So it's the NBA is going to have egg on their face either way. I don't think there's a way around it. Is the point?
Yeah, but and so a couple of things, and I'll get to what I was going to say after that, but. Say it's accurate that there is information that they did not know that came up as a result of the subpoena power and kind of untangling the more widespread conspiracy here. If they then go back and retroactively say, like, look, you should have been suspended, or you are suspended now, or you're banned from the league now, say that they do what we expect that Major League Baseball is going to do with Class A. What is Rozier's recourse? Is it like the NFL where it's just he's bound to like an arbitration where Silver is the arbiter, so he can challenge Silver's decision, but it ultimately is just up to Silver to re-review his own decision? Or will he get an opportunity to actually then take that to court? And if he can say, look, you knew about this and this, does that drag the NBA into it further? And is that part of the consideration for whether they try to really drop the hammer on it?
I have to ask you something, and keep this on when we're doing the edit. What did you just say about Major League Baseball? Class A? What is Class A? Is that a French
Emmanuel Class A.
Emmanuel
Class A, yeah.
Oh, the pitcher.
Yeah.
Oh, I thought you just said a French word. I had no idea what you were talking about.
Okay, Emmanuel Class A and Luis
I follow
Ortiz.
you. It's a pitcher with the first pitch and the prop. Yes, fair. Listen, Taryn, I'm speaking a lot of French recently, so blase, clase, not sure. Okay. In any event, Taryn, so we have some precedent for this. It's Jonte Porter. Jonte Porter was wrapped up in the same exact scheme and went away very quickly. Didn't put up any protests. Has connectivity to the league, has Michael Porter Jr., who's been doing the rounds on podcasts. We have not heard a word from Jonte Porter. So how does this happen with respect to Terry Rozier? I mean, first of all, the devil's in the details, right? If Terry Rozier is not paid, and ends up being suspended from the league and not getting paid, that's a different story. Right now, Terry Rozier, I think, has 1 year left remaining on, I think, a contract that paid him in the territory of $20 million average annual. So let's say he gets paid. Let's say he gets paid out. Let's say he gets paid in the remainder of that contract. What right does Terry Rozier have to be in the league after this? Very similar to what happened with Trevor Bauer. Trevor Bauer had his own issues outside of court. Maybe he was cleared, actually, I don't want to say he was cleared or not cleared, but a criminal court is still, or criminal procedures are now investigating Rozier at this time. So independent of what the league does and what discipline they find for him, maybe the path of least resistance is just to have him finish out his contract. They keep him on the bench. They put him on the the paid leave list for the year, and then let him hit free agency, and no one will sign him. That's what happened with Bauer once upon a time. Maybe that's the easiest path because it's a privilege to play in the league. It's not a right, and maybe that's the answer. I'm not sure what leverage Terry Rozier would have to get back in the league, and it's the same leverage that I would tell Terry Rozier if I was his lawyer. Hey, don't say a word. Everything is mum. Mum is the word. Say nothing, and let me do the work for you. So I get it, in a back, in terms of applying leverage and trying to get the NBA to allow him to play. Like, it's not like Terry Rozier is, has so much value, right? He's on kind of like a contract that's paying him well more than he's worth. And, sure, I think if this issue hadn't happened, Taryn, he has a long history in the league on mid-level exceptions and vet minimums. But when you're attached to this, I don't think there's a shot that he gets another contract with another NBA team. I don't think it's possible.
Yeah, probably because it's just not worth it.
The optics are horrendous. Yeah, I don't. The question is, Taryn, to answer your question specifically, I don't. You could send a message and say that he's banned for life. You could, but I think if you're the NBA, you cleared him for majority of the activity. That's the hard part. The hard time I have. Maybe you ban Damon Jones for life, right? That's the LeBron's friend. Taryn, have you seen that clip floating around with Gilbert Arenas about Damon Jones?
Yeah, of course. That game broke my heart.
Did it? Oh, was it Wizards?
Yeah.
Yeah. So there are stories being passed around the league that Gilbert Arenas is the leak and Damon Jones is the leak and Damon Jones and there's other people around the circle. Could you ban all of them?
Gilbert himself has portrayed himself that way.
Yeah, I mean, listen, you could ban a number of these guys for life. I have a hard time if you're the NBA doing it to Terry Rozier after you cleared him for the majority of the activity. You could certainly say if you're Adam Silver, hey, we think it's a witch hunt with respect to Rozier, but the other ones, we think that those are real. The NBA is going to have to look in the mirror. And I don't, this podcast is apolitical. I'm apolitical. I don't think the FBI just made this up. And the NBA has to look in the mirror and, to your point, hire a law firm, do things that are more than just trust us, bro. We looked at it and we didn't find any evidence of it. They're going to have to answer those questions in a much different way than the Major League Baseball had to answer to the Shohei Ohtani saga. Much different than, the NFL had to answer to the Stephen Ross tanking saga. So, yeah, I'm not envious of Silver right now. He's got two very big controversies on his hands, and in a way that I don't think we've seen a commissioner deal with simultaneously since we've been covering this podcast, at least the last 5 years, 10 years. I'm just not familiar with it.
Well, it's a very modern issue. I don't think it's one that they were as forced to deal with, but this is a significant piece of basketball-related income for the league. So if they don't deal with it, I think that it negatively affects all of their dealings. It affects the bottom line in a way that, like you mentioned, the aspiration thing doesn't really mess with the bottom line like this.
Taryn, let's do this, and I think you and I are on the same page. We're going to see how it shakes out. I'm very curious about it. We wanted to. It's an important topic. We're just doing one topic here. As a related topic, I went public and I said this. I'm pretty sure I said it on the podcast. Someone can check the records. Once this story, actually, no, I definitely didn't because we didn't cover the gambling stuff. But I've said it publicly somewhere. Someone will check the annals somewhere. But I was on the record as when this became public, this betting saga. You had Amanda Krisovich with the very timely tweet that said it's horrendous timing for the NCAA to be effective as of November 1st to allow college athletes to bet on pro sports. And Amanda said it's very bad timing. And I looked at it, and Amanda's very smart. She doesn't send that. And Amanda, obviously friend of the show, Front Office Sports. she wouldn't say that, for no reason. And my interpretation of that is that the NCAA was going to have to reevaluate the timing of this policy. It's just horrendous timing. And what do you know, Taryn? Today, Greg Sankey, the commissioner of the SEC, puts out a statement that he says he wants the NCAA to reconsider the timing of this. It looks like the NCAA will reconsider this, and it looks like November 1st, Saturday, November 1st, is the first date that this was supposed to be put into play. And what motivation would the NCAA have for letting this fly? Like, yeah, I get it. It's a very player-friendly decision to allow college athletes to bet on pro sports. But, like, what was the driving factor? Who is sitting there banging the table to say, college athletes must bet on sports? We have to have this. It seemed like kind of like throwing the athletes a bone to say they were trying to be athlete-friendly, which was like a naked throwing them of a bone. It just seemed like a nice thing. There was no quid pro quo. They just did it. And what do you know? Like, the world is a funny way of throwing things back at the NCAA, making them look terrible. Now they have to pull it back. And if Sankey is saying it, and I don't know who's saying that this, we need to, November 1st, like, we need to have our players betting on sports. I think this thing is going to get pushed back. I do. And again, like, not that I'm necessarily rooting for it, but like, it just seems like horrendous timing to have such a monumental thing happen to college athletes.
Yeah, it's odd to have it happen in the middle of the season too. But I'm with you. I really don't understand the motivation behind it. It's interesting that it's kind of happening on the heels of John Mateer and the concern whether he was betting over Venmo and sending winnings that way. So yeah, it's I understand why this is getting pushback, because I'm not sure what the motivation is.
Yeah, I'll add this, and we'll see how much more we need to add. I mean, like, at the end of the day, the NBA saga that's happening right now is based on inside information. The saga that we dealt with about a year and a half ago, 2 years ago, with Jamison Williams and all these NFL players was betting on site and betting in not betting on the NFL, but betting on other sports when they were at the facility, like in the trainer's room, and getting like their legs taped and their hands taped. Like, I said, I don't really view that as something we need to police. Like, so they can't bet on Caitlin Clark's like college basketball game, like Jamison Williams, random player on the Lions who played for Alabama, like, can't bet on women's college basketball while he's getting his legs taped. But when he goes in his car and drives home, he can bet on it then. Like, the rule just didn't make sense. I sense that was the protection. In this day and age, now we're 4 years into the NIL era, there are agents that have college athletes and they have pro athletes. And in theory, you could have access to information that you could bet on, right? If an NFL agent represents college kids and he tells his college kids something like, hey, I'm making this up, right? Like, Sam Darnold is not going to be playing this weekend. Bet the under on the Seahawks, or bet the under on the Seahawks total, whatever it is. That level of access is still there. So there seems to be a lot of risk and not much upside other than like looking like you're pro athlete for the first time. So yeah, I view it as being troublesome. But like, I think someone needs to be sent a message at some way, shape, or form. Clearly, Jonte Porter, didn't send the right message. You need to bang a player of a very high caliber and show that no matter what your scheme is, this will get out. People will find out exactly the suspicious betting pattern, and there will be ramifications and consequences for it. So I don't think the NCAA wants to be the guinea pig. I think they want to wait and see what happens at the NBA level so that all of their players know that you will be found out immediately if we see you being any part of this process. And I think Sankey's making the right move. I think it would be a big mistake to allow betting to proceed on November 1st. We have this level of uncertainty of what's happening at the federal level. Taryn, you agree with me? I see that face. Okay. As we start to wrap this thing up, Taryn, reminder, our podcast sponsored by Themis Bar Review, top bar prep company in the galaxy. I spoke at Brooklyn Sports Law Symposium on Friday. I saw a lot of students that say they love the pod, and I've been listening to the pod for years. And I'm like, listen, you're this, and I'm not going to call this person out by name, but this person was like, I'm working at a big law firm this summer, and your podcast has got me through law school. And I'm like, can I ask a question? Why have you never reached out before. Like, why don't I know who you are? And he's like, well, I didn't want to bother you. And I'm like, listen, you could send me a nice note. It's a lovely thing that we've helped you get through this, and we've helped you understand different concepts of law school and defamation and this and this. So feel free to drop us a nice note. And also, how about this? At one point in time, we had about 200 reviews on the podcast app. And then we're going to say it was a back end issue, but we lost a lot of the reviews because we switched over to a different podcast hosting platform. If you're listening to this right now and you're just sitting there, we only have 35 reviews, a measly 35 reviews. If you want us to continue to be a top 10 sports law podcast in the world, you got to give us some more reviews. You could write the nice thing there for all people to say, all people to see. And you could say nice things about Taryn. You could say nice things about me. You could say nice things about Mike. You could say nice things about anyone, but we do appreciate it. Taryn, you didn't think I was going to say that, but I want to just put that out there.
I love that, and obviously, that's how we met, is because I was a listener to the podcast and reached out to you. So it's always worth it, I think. Always valuable, and we've obviously been able to build this friendship through that. I keep saying that we're going to read the 5-star reviews.
Oh,
and I think that we should.
That's a promise. We're going to read the 5-star reviews. Great call, Taryn. And we're going to shout out whatever you say in the reviews. We'll read them. Unless they're really mean. Don't do that. That would be bad. Okay. Taryn, speaking of a gambling episode, I have one bet. And I'm going to call you out for something. So 2 weeks ago, you said, oh, Dan, your Travis Hunter bet is so bad. It's a terrible bet. Travis Hunter, okay, 8 receptions, 100+ yards. He is now very much on track to hit that very low number. I believe it's 725 yards for the season. And he basically covered 1/7 of it in one game. So I'm not nervous about Travis Hunter. The Jags might even deal Brian Thomas away, in which case Travis Hunter's now playing games where he has like 0 snaps on defense. I was right. He might get hurt. The bet might not hit, but I said they were invested in him playing on offense. Taryn, I'm right. You're wrong. Just admit it.
Yeah, you are right about that. I thought that they were drafting him as a cornerback. I thought that they were kind of overdrafting him as a cornerback. It's kind of fascinating. And good for you. He had finally a good game. I did see that. I was happy that he scored his first touchdown.
Did. Garbage time touchdown, but we'll take it.
Hey, counts.
Okay, here's my bet, okay? And I like to put these out, and sometimes I do a lot of research, and I start workshopping the idea amongst my various gambling groups, my college friends, my friends in my town, and I workshop this. And if it gets enough support, I feel comfortable bringing it up on the podcast. Taryn, I have a bet that I'm comfortable bringing up on the podcast. That is a fairly large position. You ready for this?
I'm ready.
Okay. Taryn, we're recording this on Tuesday, October 28th. Do you know who the prohibitive NFL MVP favorite is right now? Prohibitive. Heavy.
I'm not sure. Who is it?
Patrick Xavier Mahomes. Okay?
Oh.
He's basically an even money favorite to win the NFL MVP. And I get it. Narrative. Mahomes is the greatest. Everyone's saying the Chiefs are going to win the Super Bowl. Okay. Now, Taryn, what if I told you? It's my favorite episode of Entourage. What if I told you there was a player who was leading the NFL in passing yards, was 1 touchdown off the lead. He has 16 touchdowns. The leader, Matt Stafford, is 17. This player has more passing yards than Patrick Mahomes, more touchdowns than passing Mahomes. And to this point in the year, has a winning head-to-head record against Patrick Mahomes. This player was a first-round pick, is playing for a very decorated coach, and that team has the same exact record as the Kansas City Chiefs, albeit a win over the Kansas City Chiefs. Taryn, what if I told you that player who has objectively better statistics than Patrick Mahomes and a win over Patrick Mahomes was not even money, Taryn? He was not 5-1. He was not 10-1. Taryn, this player, Justin Herbert, is 35-1 to win the NFL MVP. He has a better portfolio right now than Mahomes. I think Herbert should be about 8-1, 10-1. 35-1 is just incorrect. Now, Taryn, it doesn't just end there. Are you ready for this?
Yeah. I thought you were going Daniel Jones, but okay.
No, Daniel Jones he's already priced in. The narrative is there. What I like to do is I look at the leaderboard and I try to make sense of it. Well, let me just say this. Right now, the Chargers are 5-3, identical record to the Chiefs. The next 4 weeks, I think they have a bye. It's for the next 5 weeks. They play 5 times in November. They play a complete cake schedule with the Raiders, and the Titans this week. They should win their next 4 games. So all of a sudden, Chargers could be 9-3, Taryn. They play the Eagles then on primetime, and then they play the Chiefs again. I'm just saying there's a scenario in the not too distant future where Justin Herbert is much less than a 35-1 favorite to win the NFL MVP. So if you wager on a site that allows you to cash out, I think this line is going to move dramatically in the direction of Herbert over the next couple of weeks. John Harbaugh is a big character. And mind you, he's doing it without Omarion Hampton. He's doing it without really like an all-star performance from McConkey or Keenan Allen. It's just kind of like
McConkey's been reliable.
Yeah, but not like he's not like an all-star level. Like he's been fine. He's
doing it without an offensive line.
He's doing it with nothing. And whatever. All I'm telling you is that the line is wrong. And then Taryn, what I did is I told ChatGPT, I said, take the league leaders and I want you to factor in, give me a top 10 betting odds. And I don't want you to pay anything attention to narrative, anything that happened in years past. I just want you to give me a statistical based leaderboard for NFL MVP. And guess who was number 1 on that list, Taryn?
Who's that?
Justin Herbert. And ChatGPT said that his odds should be plus 200 to win the MVP. And I'm like, Stephen A. Smith, all these crazy shows hyping up Dak and hyping up this one, hyping up that one. If we just look at the numbers, and numbers never lie, Herbert should not be 35-1. So that is my advice. You could throw $10 on it, throw $5 on it. You could do much worse at a 35-1 bet. And mind you, Herbert plays in a major media market that is Los Angeles. So that's all I'm going to say. I think there's value in the bet. Not that it's going to win, but if you want to cash it out, I think that line is going to move tremendously in Herbert's favor. Taryn, I did a lot of research on this one. You can tell. A lot of research.
I like it.
Okay. Taryn, anything to add?
No. World Series game last night was pretty awesome. The first half of it anyway. And then the second half, they refused to pitch to Ohtani, which I thought was funny.
Well, we had literally an 18-inning game, so that means the entirety of extra innings.
Yes.
That's fair. I have one story for you, then we'll call it a day. Are you ready for this?
Yeah.
So we had our big Halloween party in the town this past Friday. So everyone's got their own outfits. I dressed as a skeleton, very, very fun. My children dressed as a cat and as like Ella or Elsa. So,
nice.
Taryn, I just want to say this. I said on the podcast a couple weeks ago that I was watching the show Chad Powers that I've really become enamored with. I think this show Chad Powers on Hulu,
it's good.
Eli Manning remake, I think it's fantastic. Not just good. Like I think it's really, really well done. I think Glenn Powell is very funny. It's a sports comedy, but it's very well done. And I think
I'm going to get Hulu just to watch this.
I think it's incredible. Like it's very well done. So this is just, getting old, and like I turned 37 this year, and we're at a party, and it's like moms and dads, no kids. And I see someone dressed, and I don't know how many people watch this, but someone was dressed as the female lead in the show I don't know how many people are watching it, 6 episodes in. So I said to this mom who I don't know, I'm like, Chad Powers. And she goes, oh my God, that was so nice of you. I was so worried that no one was going to understand my costume. And I'm like, listen, I'm here. I see it. Chad Powers. Okay. I got you. And I said, listen, I'm not hitting on you. I'm happily married. I have 2 kids. I see greatness. And if there was a poll to decide who had the best costume here, Chad Powers, best costume. So Taryn, listen, when you're out on Halloween, there are going to be some good costumes, and you might feel, and this person said I made their night, that they were so nervous about going to this with a costume that no one would know. Okay. And I'm just going to say, if you see a nice costume that someone has on the street, tell them it's a nice costume. That's my PSA from your friendly sports law professor. If you see someone dressed up in a costume that you understand the niche joke, tell them you get it, because they might have some anxiety and they'll appreciate it from a random stranger. Love your costume. That's it, Taryn. That's my PSA.
Yeah, that's fun. My dog and I are dressing up as Limu, Emu, and Doug, which I'm excited about.
Great. Listen, fantastic. I think that's a great costume. And if I saw you as Limu, Emu, and I understand what it was, I would tell you to shout. I mean, I think it's pretty hard to pull off Limu, Emu for people to understand what it is, but I like the premise.
No, my dog is pretty emu shaped. I think it's gonna.
I'm not sure. A dog being emo shaped might not play, but you'll tell me. You'll come back on the pod and you'll say how I was right.
Yeah, I will. I do have a what to watch for.
What to watch for, and then we'll close it out.
Yeah. Brian Kelly was fired this week. It's the second
Family.
largest. Yeah, family. is the second largest buyout now. And the same guy, Scott Woodward, the AD at LSU, is the same one that gave the Jimbo Fisher contract, which is the largest buyout. So I think that we've got something like over $100 million definitely for buyouts so far this cycle. And I believe that this is partially what is fueling the interest in the private equity and taking that private capital by the Power Four schools. So I'm interested to see if that picks up more momentum. There's less leeway than ever to not win, which is ironic because you can lose more games than ever and make it into the playoff and still have a quote unquote successful season. So I'm tracking that. There are 8 Power Four jobs that are currently open. Because of that, there are going to be a ton of big contracts given out because there aren't a ton of quality candidates out there. And we're going to see. I think that this is going to be a continuing trend where these large buyouts are given out and then they have to make it up on the back end. But thankfully, a couple of these have had duty to mitigate clauses, which is just good contract writing, and the school should have it.
So, yeah, no, that's a great point. I saw a news article today that LSU was having this buyout primarily paid by one donor, so it wasn't coming from the school's budget or anything else. Again, sports and politics somewhat crossover. There was the same concerns about who was paying for the White House renovations. We're not going to talk about it because why would we do that? Why are we interjecting sports and politics? But point being, we're going to have this come up time and time again. And Taryn, I want to give you a compliment, and I shouted out our last podcast when I was at Brooklyn. Somebody asked, what are they going to do with private equity funds? Why is Big Ten considering this? And none of the panelists, I don't think anyone had a strong answer. And I said, you know what? Here's this thought that we talked about on our podcast, and I explained to them that maybe this is being done to preserve traditional college sports because all this money is being set aside from donors now to pay for these buyouts. We need to have a way to preserve traditional non-revenue generating female sports or male sports. And I think that was your idea, Taryn. And maybe we'll get some new listeners to the podcast for how smart that idea was, Taryn. Taryn, I am starting to get yelled at. The babysitter has left the building. I think it is time for us to wrap the pod. Taryn, wink 20 times if you agree. Okay, Taryn, I see it. That'll do it for us here at Conduct Detrimental. We will see you next week on another episode of the Sports Law Podcast, the best sports law podcast in the Western Hemisphere. It is Conduct Detrimental.